Welcome to the I Am One podcast, where we chat with Postpartum Support International volunteers to discuss why and how exactly they're supporting the mental health of new families. I'm your host, Danny Giddens. I'm a perinatal mental health certified advocate, a support group leader in my community, and I'm one staff member of the Climb Out of the Darkness program here at PSI. Hearing one person's story on a podcast changed the trajectory of my life. It was the catalyst to me opening up about my undiagnosed postpartum anxiety, depression, and OCD, processing my own trauma, and realizing that advocacy is my life's work. My colleagues and I all discovered that there is strength in processing trauma and empowerment in sharing stories. So that's what we're here to do. Most importantly, we discovered that we're not alone. Maybe you're already connected to the perinatal mental health world in one way or another. Or maybe you're just looking for ways to support new parents and families. Whatever the case, we are so glad that you tuned in. And who knows, maybe we'll hear from you next. On today's episode, we're chatting with Lisette Weber, a certified postpartum doula, co-founder of the nonprofit organization Together for Perinatal Mental Health, staff member of the Climb Out of the Darkness program, and currently she's a PSI volunteer in 2 capacities, as a local support coordinator and also as a climb leader. Lisette is busy these days chasing around 2 young kids and somehow channeling much of her energy into supporting folks in the perinatal period. We'll chat with Lisette about how she went from feeling incredibly insecure and seeking help when she needed it the most to becoming an activist for change in her community. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the I Am One podcast are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is not a replacement for therapy or any other form of professional help. Our discussions cover personal stories of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and may feel triggering to some listeners. Your number one priority is to take care of yourself. So if you are in need of help, please reach out to the PSI helpline by calling or texting HELP to 1-800-944-4773 for help in English and in Spanish. At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. Okay, let's get on with the podcast. Well, welcome back to the pod, Lisette. 2 episodes in a row. Oh my gosh, I think that you are our most frequent guest thus far.
I will always come here for you.
Oh, Lisette. Oh, that's so kind of you.
It's always a good time.
It is always a good time. I get you to myself. I don't have to share you with any coworkers for a little bit this morning. So, I'm sharing you just, I guess, with our billions of listeners, right? Or our handful, or
multiple billions,
or something in between.
Our mothers.
Yeah, our moms will listen maybe. It feels very special to be here with you. Got a little warm cup of coffee that I've only heated up about 6 times today, and it's already starting to cool down again. But I digress. So I'm glad to be sitting here cozying in with you, friend. So thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
First off, I just want to mention I Am One, the title of the podcast. We deliberated over this name for a while, didn't we? Mm-hmm. So I just want to break down for people listening. What does it mean? And now correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from all of our conversations we had about what to name this podcast, it means that we are all each one person with an experience, with a story, with a reason for doing what we do. And although none of our stories are exactly the same, we can each say, I'm one of many who experience perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. I am one of many who is experiencing or did experience something like anxiety, depression, OCD, psychosis, bipolar disorder, etc. during pregnancy and or postpartum. And the message is that we are each able to say, I'm one of many. That's one of the goals of perinatal mental health advocacy, right? Helping folks really truly understand that they're part of, upwards of 20% of the population that experience mental health complications in the perinatal period, and that there's help, right? So You're so agreeable. Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Lisette. Thanks for the backup. So I would never ask you a question that I too was not willing to answer.
How GPS of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask you a question and I'm going to give you my answer first so that you have a moment to think about what you'd like to say.
A very long moment.
Yes, I'll really stretch it out. And also, full disclosure, I lied. It's actually not a question. It's really more of like a fill in the blank. Okay. So fill in the blank. I am one. So let me give you an example. So somebody might say, I'm 1 in 10 dads who experience PMADs. My example I would say, I am one advocate with a microphone and I'm not afraid to use it. So if you would be so kind, Lisette.
Oh, gosh.
How
put me on the spot here.
Would you finish the sentence?
I
am one.
Oh gosh, this is a good one. And I remember like us talking about this and how we wanted everybody to feel like they were part of all of it, right? I mean, I could go with the basic. I am 1 in 7 moms who experienced a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. I am one who discovered a pre-existing anxiety condition after having my kids. Or I'm one Canadian on the climb team. Is that I am.
You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. Here we go.
Well, very nice. Thank you very much for sharing that, Lisette. I'm interested to hear what that would mean to all of our guests, future guests. So anyway, at the beginning of the episode, I'll always give some sort of introduction, like the LinkedIn version of who we'll be talking to each day. But could you please introduce the you that we might not be able to see on your resume? You can sprinkle in some LinkedIn. You can sprinkle in your resume a little bit. That's cool.
Sprinkle in the fairy dust here.
Hey, yeah.
Well, my name is Lisette Weber. I go with she, her pronouns. I'm a mama to 2 little ones. I have a 3-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter somehow.
It happens fast.
It happens both fast and slow. I mean, again, I live in Ontario, Canada. I'm a postpartum doula. I do too much and I can't say no, but I'm learning on that boundary. That is what this year is all about.
The year of boundaries.
The year of boundaries of just being like, you know what? There's just too much on my plate and I'm going to have to scrape a little off.
Don't scrape me off, Lisette.
I'm not going to scrape Danny off. Like,
it's
just like scrape off, I don't know, feeling obligated to make sure my house is perfectly clean or scraping off the people who are less helpful in my life and my mental health.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right?
Sorry, people.
Sorry.
You've been scraped.
You mean you are now in the green bin.
That's at least a considerate place to put somebody.
All right, like, is there like some weird analogy? Like you scrape them into the compost. It's like they were good while they were there and like helping you grow and stuff with a like compost that you then use for
it's like earthy Marie Kondo. Thank you for what you've given me. Now it is time for me to move on.
And then you can, like, they can like become the nutrients for some other person.
Oh my gosh.
This has got
that was
really
deep.
weird and deep. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So, Lisette, how have perinatal mood and anxiety disorders played a role in your personal life?
Yeah, so that's a big one.
Loaded question.
It's a loaded question because there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, which is great.
Yeah.
It's a great question. So I think the biggest thing that having a PMAD did for me was realizing that I needed to find ways to take care of myself, and realizing that like just getting by wasn't sustainable. I like immediately had issues following the birth of my daughter. She was like 5 weeks old by the time I had like my rock bottom of just like sitting there with her screaming, laying on the floor with her because I just couldn't anymore. And just realizing that like you need to ask for help. You need to you don't have to do everything alone.
Did that feel hard at the time?
Oh yeah, because like I was just like, no, everything's fine. But really inside I'm just like my heart's pounding. I had lots of thoughts of just leaving, like dropping everything and going and never coming back. So there's just a lot in terms of anxiety and what that does to you when you have a PMAD, and how you can suddenly just be like, I am useless, I am worthless, I am not made to be a parent. But it's just realizing that like you get the support you need and how much it can change your mindset. It's just like, no, I just have some sort of imbalance, or I don't have the support that I actually need. And it's opened up a whole new world for me. I mean, having kids is what made me want to become a doula, got me into doing birth work, learning more about all the things, doing all the trainings, just to learn more about like, this is what perinatal mood and anxiety disorders is. It's not your fault. These are like, oh, look, I had pre-existing anxiety. I had probably had pregnancy depression. And nobody caught that because, again, it's hiding behind this mask that no, everything is great. Pregnancy is like glowing and wonderful time, when in reality, like I was sick the entire time I was pregnant with my daughter. I hated being pregnant.
What did you mean by sick?
Oh, I had like morning sickness for like most of my pregnancy.
Oof.
Yeah, I didn't go like as far as like having to be hospitalized, but like I lived off of like Little Debbie Swiss rolls and ginger ale for a very long time. And my midwives were like, how can we add in more nutrients other than like chocolate cake and
besides rolling vegetables in the middle of your Little Debbie's?
Right? Like,
how do we hide it in there?
How do we get you more like iron and protein and things that'll build you up so that you can eat again? It's like smoothies, the answer.
Yeah. That's what worked for you, huh?
Yeah, that was a big help. Just being like, here is some like protein and greens.
I wonder what makes so many people, amid the chaos and like, you know, of being in the thick of experiencing a PMAD, I wonder what makes people say like everything's fine. Just thinking out loud.
Think out loud.
Yeah.
It's totally cultural. It's totally society being like, you have to be the perfect parent, right? It's like you have to love being pregnant. You have to have beautiful births. And like you have to like never struggle to feed your baby, because that's possible to just have a baby that pops out and is like, I know what I'm doing. And right? Like it doesn't happen. I mean, if it does for you, amazing. And I'm jealous incredibly amounts. Cool. Some of us, it takes 6 to 8 weeks before nursing actually establishes. Some of us decide that our mental health is more important, so we stop trying to nurse and we switch to formula. And you know, we live in a day and an age where that's an acceptable and sustainable way to feed your baby.
Yeah.
It's also the thoughts you have, I think, because intrusive thoughts was such a big thing for me, of just like, I can't tell anybody I'm having these thoughts, like about leaving, running away, about hurting myself or my baby, or accidentally dropping my baby. Like there's all these different things. It's like, you don't want to tell people that. They're going to think you're crazy. So you hide behind this facade that like, no, things are fine. You don't need to talk about my mental health. Like, that's not even an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you tell us a little more about what was your experience with seeking help? You kind of, you're in a place where I can hear the, speaking of chaos, it's okay. Hey, we live with kids. Lisette's kiddos
I
are
know.
probably having a ball upstairs.
We'll call it a
It's fine.
ball.
It's fine. It's not your
It's
responsibility right now, Lisette.
fine.
Stay
I
in the
am
zone.
off parenting right now.
They are your kids, but it's not your circus right now to handle.
They
So it's
are
all
my
good.
monkeys, but right
Yeah.
now they are in a different continent.
Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking, how do you get from that place where things don't feel right, but you're so, like you said, afraid to say out loud what's really going on because you don't want people to think you've lost it or whatever, fill in the blank. What was your experience like getting help?
So it's right about that like 5-week mark, maybe 6-week mark. My husband went back to work because he only took so much time off, thinking that, my baby wouldn't be like 42 weeks before she came.
That's just rude.
This is so rude. Get out.
Very inconsiderate.
So in terms of getting help, I think it was just that like in Canada, we have well baby appointments with our family doctors. So at like certain intervals. So the next one that I had, which was probably about 6 weeks, because like, 6 weeks. Everything's supposed to be fine at 6 weeks. I just said to her, I'm like, I just don't feel good. I just don't feel like things are the way that they should be. And so, I mean, good for her for like giving me a screening to do, but then she also just left me alone with it, with a screaming baby. And I was just like, this is great. This is wonderful. But in terms of like finding support outside of that, outside of the medical system was a bit complicated. This is 5 years ago. There were fewer perinatal mental health therapists in the region. There was like one support group and you had to go in person to it because I mean, this is pre-COVID. So everything is in person. And like, there just was like, it was hard. It was hard to find a therapist. I think I went through 2 or 3 therapists before I found one that really actually clicked and actually made me feel like I was working on it and getting better. In terms of like the in-person support group, my anxiety wouldn't let me leave my house.
So that was a barrier.
Right. It's like, yes, take your kid to this thing where you go talk about your feelings and then come home. It's like, okay, well, I can't deal with my daughter having meltdowns as a like newborn. Leaving the house makes me feel anxious. Leaving the house means I'm leaving behind any support that I have in my house, which at that point I didn't really. But it was like, if I go somewhere, somebody's going to see how incompetent I am. They're going to judge me. They're going to take my baby away. So like, I'm like, I can't go because what if she starts screaming? And like at that point, I'm still dealing with the guilt of deciding formula was what we needed to do. Instead of trying to nurse, I was still like pumping around the clock, but barely getting any milk because like stress levels, cortisol, all that stuff doesn't help you with all like milk production, right? So for me, like there's dealing with that guilt and it's going to go someplace and they're all going to be nursing and then they're all going to be judging me. Like, it's just like that story you tell yourself of like, if I go somewhere, they're going to see I'm inadequate and they're going to take my baby away. But then there's also like this other thought of like, maybe they should take my baby away because obviously I'm incompetent. So like, I just stay home and become some like hermit parent who just stays home with their baby, but absolutely hates it.
Blurg. That's not a good place to be.
No, it's just like, so thank goodness that out of this like last few years with the pandemic, there's so many more resources because I feel like perinatal mental health has kind of become more known. I think a lot more therapists are becoming specialized in it because of that. There's way more support groups because everything can be virtual. So for us living in Canada, like PSI support groups are possible to attend. And I mean, there's just so many more now. And like that in-person group still exists in person, but now they also have virtual options because they've realized that like, okay, parents with anxiety might not want to leave their house.
Yeah, we need to meet people where they are, really,
right? It's like if you don't have to get in a car, if you don't have to first you don't have to like get your baby fed, changed into the car seat, get all their stuff ready, and then have to take them out and change them again. Like, it's like it's so stressful.
Everybody's got that story where they got their newborn. You've got the whole diaper bag packed, the clothes are clean, everything's cool. They're in the baby carrier.
And they're in like a really cute outfit because you're going
about
somewhere.
To back out of the driveway and blow out. And you're like, well, there we go. And we're just definitely delayed another 20 minutes.
We're just going to stay home today.
Yeah. You know what? Actually,
in other news, we're just going to stay home.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with PSI? How did you hear about PSI? I think you're not alone, and I can hear your sweet kiddos. It's all good. It's fine.
I know.
I wish that I knew about PSI when I was a new parent, like you were mentioning that, like, you just didn't know what kind of support was even out there. You said something to a doctor, but then kind of felt pretty alone. So, how did you hear about PSI?
So I think it was in conversations with my friend here in town who is an expressive arts therapist, specializes in perinatal mental health. And we met through our midwifery clinic with my first and her second. And so like she was the one who really was like, you need, like, she held nothing back. She's just like very honest about like what she went through with her first, because she experienced postpartum OCD. And so like she was so open about it that you could just like talk to her about it and everything. And like, so kind of like a friendship budded out of that. And the two of us were sort of talking about the lack of resources and doing lots of research about stuff, because, once I feel like you get into having a PMAD, you look into stuff, right? It's Dr. Google. It's, so I think that's how we found PSI. And then at some point, somewhere along the line, this is in like 2020.
I won't fact check your memory. It's okay.
So 2020, we both ended up taking the 2020 Moms and PSI training. Great. And so that's how we really found out about Postpartum Support International and everything that it did. And
what's that training like? Is it just kind of like a brief intro into, what PMADs are? And
So it's about that, and it's a bit about like the types of like medication and treatment modalities and stuff that can work for folks. I think it's maybe a little less clinical than the PSI one, but it's still very, very informative, and lots of great guest speakers and just a good time.
Was that many weeks in a row? Was it like you zoomed in?
I think so. It was a Zoom 2020. It was a Zoom, and I can't remember how long. It was a couple weeks. It was a few months. Great. And you just were there and in this space and learning, and like then they talked about the climb, then they talked about all the other volunteer opportunities with PSI. And so this friend and I kind of were just like, what if we bring the climb here? And so that's kind of how we got involved that way. And then also learning more about PSI through the climb, learned about the support coordinators, or whatever they're called now, local support volunteers or something.
Yep.
They're local volunteers who just know where to find the information that you need, which is great. So I reached out and I became one of those.
Was that an easy process?
Yeah, it was just like a phone call with Melissa, and then some training videos and stuff.
There was a need in your area. There were not already.
There wasn't an active coordinator in my area. There's lots of, like in Toronto, there's lots, of course, because Toronto's huge. But yeah, so it's just like, okay, because you become like a central hub of information for people to find out stuff. Because I think even this was like pre the PSI directory, maybe even, and like getting people to get on that and reaching out and just building like a resource list of like therapists who have any experience, or like psychologists and psychiatric people. And
This would have been helpful to Lisette 5 years ago when you were
yes,
Googling and trying to figure out how to get help. And there could have been somebody in your community who could have pointed you in the direction of whatever it is that you needed. You know, you felt like you couldn't talk to your doctor, right? Or that your doctor didn't have much helpful feedback. So this would have been helpful for you to be able to just, instead of being a spinning compass, kind of like have a little bit of direction from somebody in your area to say, hey, maybe like it might be worthwhile to get in contact with this person who specializes in perinatal mental health. And
absolutely,
because it sounds like one of the things that you were missing was feeling like you could be brave in that and having a conversation and saying what was really going on for you. And it sounds like when you connected with your friend who's in the health field, you know, like she helped you kind of open up, and you were able to kind of start sharing, and that's really what helped you get interested in getting more involved in perinatal mental health advocacy. So
because even though we didn't have like therapists necessarily, I think there was like one therapist who like specialized in perinatal mental health. So she was just like, let's find a therapist who at least can do like EMDR to help with like birth trauma. Somebody who's maybe like a CBT therapist who can kind of help you with coping strategies. Like she knew enough to be like, yes, there's nobody who specializes, but we can still find somebody who can help.
yeah.
And I think that's so important, just to like, you need somebody to feel like they're on your team.
Yeah.
Because when you have a PMAD, you can feel so alone and so isolated, because you're stuck in this world trying to keep this baby alive while also trying to figure out what is going on in yourself while your body is also healing. Like there's just so much going on that you need that support person there who's going to take on that load.
And
of just being like, hey, I'm having a lot of anxiety and intrusive thoughts. Oh, here's a list of people who can really help, and you're not alone.
Yeah. Or some people don't even know what to call it. It's just like, I don't feel like myself.
Right?
Yeah.
I just feel like things are funny, and I am always mad and raging at a newborn baby.
And so for somebody to go, that is not uncommon. I'm here to listen to what you have to say and then help you instead of judging, then that's really important.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are a local volunteer in your area. Then we'll put a link in the show notes if anybody is interested in being a local support volunteer in their community. There's a link for volunteers in the US, and there's a link for Canada and other outside the US countries too. And then, so did you volunteer with that first, or the climb?
I started with the climb, and that's how I found out about the PSI coordinators, as they were called at the time. Yeah, so I sort of was like, well, let's start filling voids. Let's start, creating a resource list that is now used by our public health, and the like doulas are giving their clients and stuff. So it's been great in that fact, because I had agency being a PSI volunteer, being able to reach out to people, being like, it says on your website you support this. Do you still support this? And how do people get your support? And like knowing that like, oh, I have a 2-year wait list, or I have like a 6-month wait list, and like just being able to like be knowledgeable in that kind of a way was really helpful.
Man, like you've got so much going on. How do you have like energy for this? I mean, what keeps you going?
Lots of sleep. No.
Lots of sleep.
Lots of sleep, lots of coffee. No. I think the big motivating factor is not wanting people to be in the space I was in, because I didn't have the support I needed. I didn't know what support I needed. So I think there's a lot of energy and momentum just from that, of just being an advocate who's like actively working on improving, like increasing the amount of resources, increasing the amount of organizations who have any expertise, being that bridge between families and providers. There's something thrilling about knowing that you helped somebody get out of the darkness.
Yeah.
It's like that like little guilty pleasure feeling where you're just like, and then they got help, and then they were okay. Like, it's not that I'm calling myself Superman or something, but like
Superwoman, you are a superhero.
I think a lot of that helps, because and everything I do is all connected, right? Like, I do my postpartum doula work. My friend and I started a nonprofit that works towards, creating free or sliding scale services, as well as working for the Climb.
And also volunteer.
And a mom.
Oh yeah.
And a mom with like 2 under 5, and a volunteer with PSI in 2 capacities, and
also just trying to sleep a little bit.
It's all connected, though. I find it's all connected, and everything ebbs and flows. And like, in terms of like being a postpartum doula, I can take on clients when I have capacity. So if I'm not feeling that I can give them at like 100%, then I'm not gonna take on a client.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, it's everything ebbs and flows, or sometimes you like step back in other capacities, and like, we're starting this nonprofit, but like, we're working on getting our board so that we can step back a bit and just focus on like that on ground support of families.
Yeah. One really fun thing about, I was just thinking about the Climb, is that you can before your own eyes see everything come together in a community when you've got like providers attending your Climb, and you've got like community members, maybe somebody who's experiencing a PMAD now, or did like a year or 2 ago, or at my Climb, we've got people that experienced PMADs like 10, 15 years ago that are still coming, and helping the noobs get the resources that they need. So anyway, I'll put a link in our show notes about Climb Out of the Darkness too, if anybody's interested in learning more about Climb Out of the Darkness, about leading a Climb, about attending a Climb. Anyway, well, Lisette, before we hop off here, I have a lightning round of questions that's kind of fun if you feel like sharing. Are you, Lisette? I need consent. Are you consenting to the lightning round?
Let's do this.
Okay. So, are you ready?
Always
okay,
ready.
Lisette, besides this one, obviously, what's your favorite podcast currently?
Mom and Mind is pretty great. Also, I really like Perinatal Wellbeing Ontario.
Okay.
And the podcast that Christine puts on there.
Shout out.
Christine is awesome.
Shout out to both of those amazing podcasts. Who's your favorite coworker? Oh my God. How did that question get in there?
Oh, I'm
sorry about that.
Danny.
My bad. Do you like a book in your hand or a book in your ear?
I like to hold my books.
There we go.
I like it. I like big books.
She cannot lie. What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Getting songs stuck in people's heads.
At work.
So
rude.
I just did this to Danny yesterday.
Yeah. And it's like, you don't even know that Lisette's doing this. Is not much of a lightning round because I'm digressing here, but you don't even know she does it. And until you find yourself just typing away while you're kind of like co-working on Zoom, like you're both doing your own thing. All of a sudden I found myself humming something, and Lisette goes, yes, because she was successful in somehow humming a song. And it's like, oh my gosh, now this is stuck in my head. She did it.
I did it. I like doing it. It's really amusing. and easy.
Okay, besides getting songs stuck in people's heads, what is your go-to for a quick mental break?
Dancing it out.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of your TikToks.
Some loud tunes.
I've seen some of your climb TikToks.
Oh, geez.
Okay, this one's kind of serious. Are you ready?
Oh, gosh. Okay.
What is one way that you'll give yourself some radical self-love today? No pressure.
No
you
pressure.
Can do it.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Blaring some show tunes and dancing it out before you go deal with the chaos.
Yeah, I mean, right? Actually, I think some radical self-love, I think is just actually like getting some work done and checking off those check boxes that have been staring at me for a few weeks.
Aww.
So I think getting some things accomplished.
Nice.
Is good because that just makes me feel good, which is what self-love is all about.
Yeah.
Is just getting that unicorn across the screen
in a sauna.
I check something off. Woo, unicorn. There's a Yeti. No. If you don't know, Asana is like what we use for like work planning and projects and stuff, and every time you check off something you get like a little visual surprise
in the form of a unicorn that kind of streaks across the screen.
Yeah,
it's like an appropriate streak, not a
it works for me.
not an
it flies across your screen diagonally.
Streak might have not been the best word choice.
A streaking unicorn. Unicorns don't wear clothes, so how can they streak?
I don't know, Lisette. Okay, we're moving on. Here's the last one. What's your favorite parenting hack? Pro tip.
Whenever I make my kids' beds, I always double them so that there is a waterproof layer with a made bed underneath.
And then another waterproof layer.
Yeah, so like the beds are made, it's a huge bed sandwich of like bed sheet, waterproof sheet, another bed sheet, and another waterproof
sheet. That's so smart. So middle of the night,
because
take it off.
Middle of the night vomits, middle of the night poop explosions. I have cleaned when I was still in a crib. I managed to change her sheets. She'd like vomited in her sleep and she didn't wake up, which was disgusting on its own. I managed to change her sheets without her waking up.
That's incredible. You do get to call yourself Superwoman. That is professional.
That was like
next
my
level.
Peak parenting. It was like I peaked there. Everything else has just kind of gone downhill.
No, it has not.
No, but like I think it's just really useful and that more parents need to know about it. So double up on your sheets. Get those waterproof covers. They are lifesavers.
Lisa, you're saving lives.
I'm saving lives and helping parents get one more minute of sleep.
There you go. Well, listen, if anybody is wanting to connect with you, especially, any listeners that might be local to you, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can follow Facebook, Instagram at Together Waterloo or at Postpartum Sidekick for my local nonprofit and for my doula biz.
Great. We'll leave links to that in our show notes. And for anybody that's interested in being a climb leader in Canada, we will leave Lisette's email address in the show notes. It's lisette@postpartum.net, and you can get in touch with Lisette about leading a climb in Canada. So anyway, Lisette, thank you for chatting with me today. It means a lot that you came here to spend some time with me and share your best pro tips in the lightning round with all of us.
In the lightning round. Yeah. The best part of this podcast today was
the most profound thing that was said on this podcast was doubling up your kid sheets. You heard it here first. No.
It's always a blast talking with you.
Oh, thanks, friend. Thanks for tuning in to the I'm One podcast. check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider liking, following, and sharing about our show on social media and subscribing to and rating our show wherever you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, you'll help people find this podcast, thus helping our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at the Climb Team, thanks again for listening.